I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual now. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬、一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
So today what I chose to talk about, in keeping with what Derek mentioned during his opening comments, was how talking about peace, because we have experienced a great deal of disruption and violence over the past couple of weeks. And, you know, I saw all of this stuff flying around Facebook yesterday, and it felt as though I needed to. I really don't comment on political issues or other things like that because I just don't think that it's particularly pertinent or effective in forums like that. But I did, you know, weigh in when it came to some of these issues. Regarding what we've experienced with law enforcement and oh gosh, just the massive conflict that we're seeing today. And I think on a larger level, what we've seen over the past several months, this divisiveness and this separation between people and belief sets and bigotry and hatred that has flared up, I don't really. There have been instances of this, but I don't know that I've seen it this prevalent since in the 70s. And I experienced a lot of this firsthand because I grew up in Kentucky, and there was a big divide between black and white when it came to where I grew up. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And I wanted to talk about, make this thing move here, there we go. I wanted to talk about violence. And again, these are not well-researched assertions. These are just my initial quick passes on this. But when we talk about violence, what really triggers that? What's the core? And I think everyone would agree that fear is the essence of it. The fear that I won't have enough, that I'll run out of whatever it is that I feel that I need to be able to sustain myself. There's an element of power where some people are lured into this oh gosh, I don't even know how to phrase it, this aphrodisiac of power and lording over other people. And I think that's evident throughout history, that we can see that there is an addictive quality to power in and of itself. I think you can see that with some of the leaders who are asserting themselves now, the characteristics of arrogance and disdain that characterize their communication, and how could we possibly think that this would be beneficial for the multitude?
See, Fuad, there's a bit of a high-pitched feedback. We may need to. Maybe a good idea to back away from the microphone a little bit.
Oh, okay, let me do that. Let me also, I actually have some music running in the background. Let me make sure it doesn't have anything to do with that. Let's turn that off. And so is that any better?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so I turned it off, and also, so the past weeks I practically had to have a laptop on my chin, and now I got it up too high, so so maybe this will be a little bit better. So again, kind of going back to this list, one of those principles that we see, I mean, and this is certainly not exclusive to America, but I think all of us at some point have felt this, that I and my way of life will not survive, that with which I'm familiar will simply cease to exist. And, that goes down to the core of our fear of what happens to us. What happens when we die? Do we just evaporate, or does something continue? So this is an enormous fear that is a survival mechanism that we all experience. And then the root of this is fear of change. So in my opinion, as we observe, particularly in the Tao, how change is an inevitable, natural, flowing portion of life, that in fact it's all of life. The more that we embrace this, the less likely it is that we're so triggered by that fear of survival, of continuing even the things that we're familiar with. Then we begin to abate some of those emotional triggers. So how can we avoid this? What are the ways that we can potentially eliminate these experiences that are occurring? I think everyone will probably agree that education and empathy have to be the clear solutions. When we know more about the people with whom we share the world, and we recognize the unity and the similarities, as Alex was saying in his presentation, then clearly there is no enemy to be had. If we look at nature for an example, we are all these biological mechanisms that are the same. I mean, now we may be a little bit different. If you look, they're beautiful. But even within the same species of flowers, they're all slightly different. Are we still there, guys?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just hearing various sounds, so I just wanted to make sure we're still going forward. So if we really look at flowers, I have no idea how many species or varieties.
Ed, we can't really hear you now.
Oh, okay. So how's that? Is that any better?
Better, yes.
Okay. So shall I continue?
Please.
Okay. So I'll take that back just a little bit. But thinking about flowers, I think everyone's had this experience. When I go for my walks in the morning, I enjoy very much looking at the different varieties of flowers that are all throughout the path of my walk. And upon further examination, when I look at a rose bush that may have 15 to 20 blooms, they're all beautiful. They may all be the same color, but they're all very unique. So I think that it's clear that the earth has spawned these life forms of which we're one. And if we kind of look at that, well, we're very much the same as the flowers. We have a great many differences, but we're all beautiful in different ways. We all have different colors and shapes, and even within the spectrum of our same particular species or our same particular race, creed, denomination, whatever it may be, there are a great many differences that we can appreciate. So the more that we know one another, the more that we recognize the similarities, the less fear there will be. the more understanding, and then thus the more peace. And if we look at the core, the root, all of us want the same thing. We want happiness. We want peace. When we live in violence, or we want to live in violence, that disruption is a false stimulus. I used to, I've talked to you guys before about how I used to live my life when I was young. And there was a great deal of conflict and a great deal of hatred. And part of what eliminated that in my life was growing to know the people that I used to fight and recognizing that they were the same as me. And I started to develop a respect because of familiarity, because of awareness, of knowledge, of communication. And I can't help but to think that the same would be true under the current circumstances. So one of my friends posted this on Facebook, and I found it and threw it up because I thought this was from Martin Luther King's Nobel Prize lecture that he gave. It's an excerpt. Violence never brings permanent peace. It solves no social problem. It merely creates new and more complicated ones. Violence is impractical because it is a descending spiral ending in destruction for all. It is immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than win his understanding. It seeks to annihilate rather than convert. Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. It destroys community and it makes brotherhood impossible. It leaves society in monologue rather than dialogue. Violence ends up defeating itself. It creates bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers. And I couldn't think of a more true quote. This mirrors exactly my experience, not only just as an observer, but as a participant in violent activities. The next, I picked two quotes from Jiddu Krishnamurti. He was a primary philosophical influence of Bruce Lee, and a very unique individual in his view of the world. And the two quotes that I selected for this, one is from a book called Freedom from the Known. When you call yourself an Indian or a Muslim or a Christian or a European or anything else, you are being violent. Do you see why it is violent? Because you are separating yourself from the rest of mankind. When you separate yourself by belief, by nationality, by tradition, it breeds violence. So a man who is seeking to understand violence does not belong to any country, to any religion, to any political party or partial system. He is concerned with the total understanding of mankind. And the second quote, freedom and love go together. Love is not a reaction. If I love you because you love me is a mere trade, a thing to be bought in the market. It is not love. To love is not to ask anything in return, not even to feel that you are giving something. And it is only such love that can know freedom. So one of the things that we take great pride in many times is nationality, our nation. And rightly so, we have some wonderful things that occur in our nation. But sometimes that national pride turns to hubris, it turns to arrogance, to where we somehow feel as though we have an upper hand and that everyone else should follow in our footsteps rather than being able to recognize the commonality of all men. And this is why I think Krishnamurti is so relevant for what we're experiencing at this time. If we kind of let go of the labels, if we let go of these senses of familiarity of that which is tradition, in quotes, and begin to just experience what is and the relational element of humans between one another, then we've got a shot. if we keep placing up the barriers, if we keep creating these separations and demeaning other people, then all we're going to get is what we've seen over the past few weeks and the hate mongering. And I think everybody knows that that's a path of no return. So when it comes to our perspective, and again, I love this photo that someone took on the 2005 trip, where the Tao emanates outward, all of these manifestations of the sameness, of different expressions of the same truth. And I think all the more relevant that we are in agreement that this should be the commonality of all men and women and dogs and cats, all sentient beings, because we all really want the same thing. So that's my presentation for today. I hope everybody has a great week.
Yeah, thank you very much. I share your concern about about what's happening in our society, about the state of our nation, and people have certainly asked that I comment on it, and I'm glad to do so. In the meantime, I want to overall address that there are three things, three key issues that Ed is touching on and that I will also touch on, that in the Tao, it's about balance, it's about peace, and unity. So what is the Tao in all of this? It's whatever the path is, that's the right path to bring us closer to balance, peace, and unity. So I'll talk about exactly what that is and how it bears upon our current issues. Ed, in the meantime, want to send you a relay of feedback from Tim. Excellent, Ed. And also from BB. This is an excellent quotation. The question is that, is this quotation for people of color to read, but not anyone else? Violence is dying for selling a few loose cigarettes, or as what we have seen, CDs on the street corner. Violence is used for, violence becomes pronounced as violence when people being targeted get sick and tired of being the only targets in the U.S. So, so BB says she does not condone the killing by any means of anyone, including the police officers. We have to understand that they were innocent, and death for such trivial matters is not addressed by the public at large, and that is not balanced. So BB, in fact, I will talk about that in just a moment. Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架规则是一鞠躬，接班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Participate in the Tao meeting by joining us online. For information, go to Taoism.net/Tao